Hi everyone. Today I'll be teaching you how to measure length. Oops. Okay. So what is length? I'm sure you've picked up a ruler before in the classroom to measure something. So today we will be doing that to the nearest half inch and the nearest fourth inch. So length is the distance from end to end. Simple rules for measuring using a ruler. Line up one end of the object at the 0 mark to the left. As you can see in this picture, the pencil tip is lined up exactly to the 0 on the left. And then you can read the number at the other end to the right. So we can look at the end of the pencil and it's lined up with 6. So that means 6 inches long. Okay, so this is important for you to know in case you have a ruler at home that you're working with. Some rulers have a 0 mark on the left, just like this one. You can see that on the left where the pencil tip is, there's a 0. And you know exactly where to line up the edge of your object. But some rulers don't show 0 here. So you don't know where to line up your object. So you can assume if the ruler does not show a 0 mark, that you're going to line up your object to the edge of the ruler. Okay. So let's take a closer look at a ruler. So if you notice, each tick mark, the longer ones, are a whole number, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. And if you cut one of those whole numbers in half, you get 1/2, of course. So half of the space between 0 and 1 is a half. So that means if an object were to be like, what's an object that's small? A paperclip. If a paperclip started at 0 and went to 1/2, we can tell that it's lined up to the half mark, and we know that this paperclip is 1/2 of an inch. Okay, so then that means that if an object comes all the way over here, the paperclip is much bigger this time. You look to the left and you find the whole number, and then if it's near the second longest tick mark, you know that's a half. So it's 1.5 inches long. One more. So it's just showing another example of what 5.5 would look like. Right in between the 5 and the 6 tick mark, right in the middle, it cuts it in half, so it's 5.5 inches long. Okay, so taking another closer look, there are also other marks, right? So this is 0, this is 1/4, and this, if you remember when we did our fraction unit, we just talked about how it's 1/2, right? Well, 1/2 and 2/4 are equivalent. 2/4. So really, you can write either of those, but we know that we use 1/2 if the object is lined up with this tick mark. Clear that. So just like with 1/2, we can count we know that it's cut in 1/4 because if you have this whole piece, it's cut into 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, and then this 4th piece. So it's 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece, 4. And the first tick mark is 1/4. Let's look at another. Similarly, this means that the third tick mark is 3/4. So let me label in between 3 and 4. This would be 3 and 1/4. This would be 3 and 2/4, or 3.5, because they are equivalent. They're equal. And this is 3 and 3/4. And just to help you visualize better, the whole numbers represent 4 over 4, which just equals a whole. So that means there are 3 4/4. I hope that helps a little bit. If that confused you, that's okay. Okay, so measuring to the nearest inch. If your textbook or a question asks you to measure to the nearest inch, you're going to find out where the object lines up first. So we're looking at the right side of the object, seeing where it lines up, and then we're seeing which whole number the edge of this object is closest to. So is it closer to 3 or is it closer to 2? It's closer to 2, right? So it's nearest, so measuring it to the nearest inch, it would be 2 inches. Okay, let's try one more. Okay, so taking a look at this paper clip, is it closest, you're checking the right side, is it closest to 1 inch or is it closest to 2 inches? It is closest to 2 inches. So the answer would be 2 inches. Okay, so that is measuring to the nearest inch. Now we are going to measure to the nearest half of an inch. So this means we're looking for the closest half mark. So we can see that the glue stick is lined up to here. And we know that this is a half mark, this is a half mark, and this is a half mark because it's between 2 and 3. So it's in the middle. So which half mark is it closest to? I would say that one. So we know we have to look to the left, 2 inches and a half. So 2.5 inches is our answer. So now let's look at the paper clip. Right down there, here's a half mark, the closest half mark nearby. So we know that we look to the left, 1.5, oops, let's do 1.5 inches. Okay, so that's measuring to the nearest half an inch. Let's check out the next one. Measuring to the nearest fourth. We got this. So we're looking at it again, right here. Here's the nearest tick mark, the nearest fourth. So how do we figure out what the top number is? We know the bottom number. Well, we know the left number will be 2, the big number, 2 inches. We know we're looking for fourths, correct? So now we have to figure out what the number on the top is going to be. Well, we know that this would be 0 over 4. This would be 1 over 4. This would be 2/4 or 1/2. And this would be 3/4. So we can tell that it's going to be 1/4. And that's our answer, 2 1/4 inches. Okay, let's try the paper clip. Cut it right down there. I went a little diagonal. Try it again. Make sure we line it up. Okay, so now I'm looking at it. I know that this is 2/4 and this is 3/4. It's closer to the 3/4, it looks like. So I can tell, I look to the left, it's 1 inch. I know we're doing fourths, and it's 3/4. It's closest to. So that is 1 inch and 3/4. 1 3/4 inches. That is measuring to the nearest fourth inch. What's next? Creating a line plot to the nearest fourth inch. So I'm going to take my ruler here, and I'm going to measure each of my fingers to give us some data to plot on this line plot. So don't look at that yet. It's a little scary. We're just going to figure out what the data is first. So I'm going to start at my knuckle and measure my finger to the nearest fourth inch. So my first piece of data is 3 1/4. So I'm going to write that here. 3 1/4. My next piece of data is 3 2/4. Okay. Next, 2 3/4. We've got 2 1/4. So I'm just measuring each of my fingers to give us some data. My thumb, 2. It's right on the 2. So I can leave it at that. Let's see. And I'm going to assume, maybe I shouldn't assume. I'm going to double the data because I know that my other hand will probably be the same. So now, looking at our line plot, we're going to take an X. Oops. I actually have to do it out here like this. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to take an X. I'm going to look at my data, 3 1/4, and place an X for that first piece of data. So 3 1/4, and now I have my X on the line plot. So now I need to take another X, look at my second piece of data, 3 2/4. So I'm putting it on 3 2/4. Now I'm taking 2 3/4 from my data, placing it this way. What they want you to see with the line plot is that 2 3/4, you have to line up the X on this imaginary line going upwards. Same with 3 1/4. Lining up X's upwards right above the number of the data. So let's check it out. Let's do a few more. So my next piece of data is 2 1/4. I'm putting my X right above that. And the next piece of data is 2. So I put my X right there. Okay, and now I'm doubling the data for my other hand. So I'm going to put another over that one, another over this one, over that, and the last one here. So now we can kind of see the range that my finger length is at. So we have 10 pieces of data here, and now if somebody wanted to know the length of my fingers and they didn't have that data, they can look at the line plot and they can figure out the measurements of my fingers. So after viewing this video, good job, you got to the end, you're going to do a length scavenger hunt at home. If you have a ruler, find it, and hopefully you'll be able to participate in this activity. It's really fun. So you'll be measuring some common household items. So please find the length scavenger hunt slideshow on Google Classroom and fill it out and make sure you submit it. Thank you. I have to figure out how to end the video.